Breaking news. Big shocking changes ahead for fall of 2025. So in the psychic forecast with top predictions for autumn 2025, we will reveal shocking news around Donald Trump and world politics. Dynamic changes in global structures, natural, geological, and atmospheric events, along with top prediction for autumn of 2025. We'll also discuss how global awakening and ascension is changing the landscape and what we can do to stay empowered as the old earth crumbles and a new, more enlightened society emerges. Fasten your seatbelts. Things are about to go into overdrive. For this psychic forecast, we'll go beyond just the world politics and describe how the world is changing, how the sun is changing, and how we are changing, and our lives are changing. I've got everything down on my notes, otherwise I'm going to forget too much, so I'll be reading a lot from my notes today. But the earth is purging, it's awakening, and this is what it is. It's a 9 universal year. September is actually a 9 universal month of endings, completions, and a lot of stuff rising to the surface. So we are awakening. Old systems fall as humanity struggles in its evolutionary process. So much comes to a head this fall. So psychic prediction for autumn 2025. Here's how I see it playing out. I'll start out with a brief month-by-month synopsis. Then I'll dive into specific predictions, starting with politics, and then we'll go into other important topics, basically. So firstly, the month of September. Now, we're in our 9 universal year, and September is a 9 universal month, so it's a double 9. So there is a lot that is ending and a lot that's rising to the surface. Endings, exposures, leaders stepping down. We predicted this before the summer, and it's happening. And laws, policies, and we're also in eclipse season, so it's very dynamic. A lot of changes, a lot of solar, geological activities likely to begin, especially the second part of the month. And this is September. A lot's gonna fall, a lot's gonna end. It's gonna set the stage for huge monumental changes moving forward into this year and to the next few years to follow. Now, October, that's a universal number 1 month. It's still a 9 year, it's still completion, but we're actually going to get a little taste or a sneak preview of what life is going to look like in 2026. So we'll see a few new foundations starting to get built. A sense of hope, a sense of renewal comes with that. New laws, new procedures. A lot of news on AI infrastructures being built, as well as technology, foundations of new digital systems coming up, and things of that, and a lot of what's going to be in the future. We're going to start to really see forming at least the skeleton of it in the month of October. Now for November, this is a 20. And a 2 month in numerology. 20 is the Great Awakener. 2 is very reflective energies. And so basically it's the Awakener. It's very reflective energy. Focus will be on duality and division. So we'll see a lot of that in November. More awakening happens while the forces to suppress awakening get stronger. It's a big season for spiritual, personal, and global awakening. But there are those forces that want to oppose that are getting stronger. More revolutionary activity, more demonstrations that get out of hand, National Guard, military, crowd control, all that stuff is on the table for November. It can really happen any time in the autumn, but there's a focus of that in November. And then for the month of December, that's our 3 month, our 12/3 month in numerology. That's about growth and expansion, about more fairness, more in the way of diplomacy. I think we see that October and beyond, even towards the late of September, even though we see escalation in conflicts as well. So, month of expansion and growth, new laws become enacted, changes to safeguard the economy get put into play, new leadership in several places, possibly even the U.S., and I'm going to get to that in a second. Preparation is key. There's no fear here, just empowerment, but we don't sugarcoat it either. Otherwise, I'd be doing you a disservice. And That's basically it. Predictions are just a tool to understand how the energies what the energies are like in the now, and how that is likely to play out in the future. But timelines are fluid, so if we raise the vibration in the now, we'll help to feed the collective for better outcomes in the future. Nothing in this forecast is written in stone, though I have to say the wheels have been set into motion. And a lot of this, though it's not written in stone, the timelines are pretty close to being set. But that said, we still have free will. We can still raise our consciousness individually, and that'll help to raise the consciousness collectively. And we will be okay, basically. Variables like polar shifts, solar shifts, and the influence of 3i Atlas and other space anomalies will affect weather geology as well as global politics and events. So all that's on the table. The 3i Atlas is a big wild card in this whole thing, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. But let's go into world politics. What's going on with Donald Trump? This will be a season of internal power struggles across multiple governments, including the U.S. That was shown to me very clearly. As predicted in the summer forecast, as well as later predictions, world leaders are indeed stepping down, and the structures of global governments are changing. We've talked about that in a few forecasts, starting actually the beginning of the year, but mostly in the summer forecast. So the whole geopolitical landscape is going to continue to change. I do see one, if not two, world leaders possibly shockingly crossing over. So keep that in mind. I had a vision about that. And also I did a little bit of divination through tarot cards, and it showed me that as well. This is a season where several public figures leave the earth. It may not just be in politics, it may be in showbiz, sports, and other areas. Now, having said that, I do believe that probably a couple of world leaders, maybe ex-presidents even, may cross over. I don't think Donald Trump is one of them, at least not this year. So I want to make that clear. We do have to watch out, like King Charles, Putin are both possibilities. And there may be one or two surprises also that I'm not getting specifically who that is. Sometimes Spirit doesn't show us everything. But whatever that is, it's going to definitely be shocking and change a lot of the political structures anyway. Now, I also think one or two ex-presidents may cross the veil this autumn or into the winter, so that's something to keep an eye on. Multiple health issues arise amongst world leaders, not just in the U.S., but in other world leaders. So I think we're going to see that as a little bit of a thematic tangent. For President Trump, health is the number one concern. As I predicted in the summer forecast, that we'd start to see that in late summer. I think I also predicted that in the spring forecast. And that only gets more relevant as the autumn goes on. Also, pressures to resign mount from bipartisan as well as foreign leaders. So we're already seeing that. Epstein reveals and stuff like that, some partial disclosure could complicate things as far as Donald Trump's presidency goes. ICE protocols come under heavy criticism, border tensions increase, executive orders, and such, and all the rest of it. But still, health is the big issue as new insights surface, especially later this month, September. But Trump is resilient, and as I've outlined, what I've gotten in his health and other videos, and he'll be under watch, he'll be undergoing treatments, but I do believe he'll still be able to continue to function as the president, at least for the time being. Now, I had predicted originally, before he even got elected, that he'd get elected and that his presidency would last 2.5 years maximum. I was thinking more like 2 years. You know, that prediction is still my official prediction, but changes in his presidency could definitely happen sooner than that. Anytime before that period is fair game, I have to say, because no specific visions have come up for anything prior to that to make me feel it'll happen before 2026 into 2027, but it could. And but I definitely do not see him finishing his term. I never have. I did have a very stark prediction in May, a vision that you may recall that was on a short in a couple of my videos, where I saw him motionless on a gurney in a hospital with a lot of equipment around him, IVs and stuff. And it was probably around that time or just after that that he disappeared from social media for like 3 days. Nobody really saw much of him. And then when he came back, he looked frail. That's when there were a lot of shots of him tripping and not making it up the stairs. And I feel that he either had a pacemaker put in or some other less invasive cardiac procedure at that time, or something minimally invasive. But despite the health concerns and other issues, I don't think he's leaving quite yet. I could be wrong. You can let me know in the comments kindly and respectfully what you believe about that. I do believe elections are manipulated. That's 2024, that's 2020, that's 2016, and before that. Not playing favorites here. And the ruling parties and the globalists, I believe, this is just conjecture because I don't have any solid proof, wanted Trump in office to stir things up, deepen the divide, and then get Vance or maybe Johnson or Miller to step up, carrying out the Agenda 2030. Because Trump, in a way, he shows, making some of the steps towards these agendas, but he's also an outlier. He shows being his own person, very outspoken, obviously, stir things up. And I think they felt that this is the ideal person to deepen the divide, distract the people. Then when it's the right time to have him step aside and let somebody that's going to fulfill these agendas that he may not carry out into office. Again, just conjecture. You can agree or not agree. But if I get any new updates or specifics on the timelines, I'll do another video. So for now, I'm feeling that the end is probably closer to later 2026 into 2027, but there's a real window of opportunity in the autumn. I wish I could be more specific. Perhaps it's the fact that even though I'm bipartisan and I see the faults, as well as a few merits on both sides, it still affects me. It's the more you care, the harder it is to get pure psychic information. As much as I try, and I feel I'm better than most. So my prediction is he'll withstand these storms, but it could go the other way. Look out, even as soon as the end of September, but October through January, could be. Anyway, on that note, someone under Trump may step down, like Vance or Johnson or Miller, or someone else in high office in the American government. I've got more stuff on Trump, but let's jump into more world politics. 3i Atlas a little later on, Earth changes, geology, and other big news that's coming up. I haven't mentioned Macron, I think that's how you pronounce his name, or France, virtually at all until very recently in a recent psychic forecast. I think it was the last tarot time. Within a day or two, he came up on the news with the specter of his prime minister, one of the prime ministers stepping down, and some reorganizations in France. So he and other European leaders and world leaders in general may step down. This is a process that takes up in France, even Canada, much of the European Union is coming. Portugal and Greece also came up in my thoughts and feelings for sudden political change and strife, as well as Turkey or maybe Eastern Europe in general to the Middle East. World leaders stepping down, Macron maybe, Starmer, Netanyahu, Putin. There's other world leaders on the table. I was also seeing mass protests. I've been seeing that for a while. I've been talking about it for a while on the escalations, and it's been happening on schedule. It's still increasing. It's still getting stronger. Revolutionary activities. We may see nations wanting to break away from the European Union. States even talking about seceding from the United States. All that stuff is really relevant under this energy. And I feel it in actuality really panning out. I don't necessarily think there's going to be a major revolutionary war during the autumn, but movements in that direction, and there could be some strife and some leanings towards that anyway. So where are we? Mass protests, especially UK, we know that. US, we know that also. Russia, more in Russia, more standing up to the leadership in Russia. I think that's going to be big in the headlines as more comes out about the nature of what's going on internally in that country and those countries involved in the war. Chinese missiles or armaments may show up in Russia as well, so that's something to keep an eye on. I also see assassination attempts, and RFK Jr. needs to watch out for that. On that note, since I'm talking about it, expect big shakeups in the pharmaceutical companies and all that stuff that we're starting to see. Whether we agree or disagree, it's happening. And I think at the end of the day, corruption is going to rise to the surface. And I don't think that that it's going to like totally destroy the vaccination programs and things of that nature, just to put some people's minds at ease. I just think that more is going to be revealed, and things that we should have known about all along will start to rise to the surface so that we can make more informed decisions on what medications that we take and what we put into our bodies, basically. So other world leaders, yeah, there could be assassinations in different countries. I mean, that can happen anytime, but I think there's a ramping up of that activity around the autumn. And of course, Donald Trump, yeah, I predicted 3 attempts. There's only been 2 so far. Maybe the third happened and we didn't know about it, but definitely RFK Jr. and other top officials in this and other country got to be on the lookout. I think that that's increasing. More whistleblowing, especially around Epstein. And I predicted almost a year ago that this September, this month now, would be a big turning point in the reveal of some of the names on the Epstein list. And certainly we're seeing that. Will we get a full reveal? And will everybody go get put to justice? Honestly, I don't think so, but at least a partial list. And also a new female perpetrator other than Maxwell may be identified too. So I think a lot's going to get revealed, basically. And in this 9-year, a lot of truth will come out. We may at least see some partial justice. And, again, with this number 9 year, we were talking about a lot getting revealed anyways, and a lot rising to the surface. So news of pandemic cover-up, sure, that's on the table. May hear about a new pandemic threat, but chances are we'll be fine with that. And it's more likely for something major to happen late, in the 2020s to 2030, honestly. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Now, 12/21, or 9/21. Well, 12/21 is the solstice. That's a huge day, also. But September 21st is the solar eclipse on the world axis on United Nations Peace Day, and more shocking changes will be catalyzed by these astrological energetic events that are coming. In this once in a lifetime event, and what it may bring. And I have that on a separate video above for you. So I just spoke of drone attacks. In the video that's above, I think I mentioned that, or the one before. And that just happened in Poland, apparently, from what I see in the news. Russian drones and bombings in Poland just happened. So this leads to a lot of destabilization in NATO and the European Union in general. Also Venezuela, Colombia, Africa, South Africa, all part of the Great Purge. Too much going on to itemize everything, but a lot's going on. But I do think new peace talks can begin around the 21st, especially Russia, Ukraine, but that could be in different areas. More tension in the Middle East, new attacks on Gaza before October, where new ceasefires may start to happen. A couple of governments fall and interim governments get put into place, possibly in a European Union nation, maybe France, we'll see. And we see Trump continuing to border peace deals. We also see economic changes this fall. A mini crash or reset is likely late September into October, with some recovery later on, including changes in international trade, tariffs rescinded in a few cases, extended or expanded in other cases. Trump may propose a stimulus package or a tax rebate based on tariff revenues and spending cuts. toward the end of the year, I want to say, huge protests that I already predicted for areas like D.C. Army and National Guard called in different areas to control crowds, more arguments on whether these moves are justified. The Trump orders are if the Trump orders are justified, if that's what they're for, if the goal is to weed out corruption in these areas where the National Guard and the Army is going. There'll be, I'm not saying one way or the other, but there will be debates and arguments both sides. And I'll tell you, I could go on and on, but suffice it to say, the facade of a world we once knew is crumbling. We'll soon know more about what's behind the corrupt global rulership, the systems, and changes that will follow as we've been forecasting here. Many top players in the health sectors, technology, government, financial institutions get some level of exposure, and September and through the autumn is a big time for that in this 9 vibrational year. Reforms or changes towards late year on the economy, global cryptocurrency, gold-backed currency likely to be planned or enacted. Round of higher prices are likely, and inflation is likely as the fall progresses. Some of it selectively based on supply shortages to manipulate the economy, so keep an eye on that. I see increased detainments in airports, flights grounded, and stuff like that, supply lines cut off. A lot of travel, a lot of issues with travel in a lot of sectors. In general, people become more angry, violent as a sign the tension is maxing out and sweeping changes are inevitable. So that proverbial rubber band is stretching between those that are awakening and want change and those that are still programmed and it's likely to snap. So, pack a lot of patience and be aware that people may be even more angry and even more violent than ever. Stay safe, stay aware, stay informed. Unfortunately, more violence against religious and educational facilities are likely to happen. Generally, there's movement towards peace. This is a time of endings, but we see lots of attacks, border wars, countries like Russia being isolated, people starving, the side of war that we don't see, basically, and why it's such a horrible thing that we don't get to see a lot of what's going on inside of these countries and what's happening to the people who, by the way, are not choosing the war. They're powers above them that are deciding these wars, and they suffer, of course. Cyber attacks against governments, financial institutions cause further proposals for AI surveillance to increase across these sectors, social media and others, sparking further outrage and diminishment of rights and more surveillance and all that stuff. I see trials, leaders. I see trials of leaders, Epstein suspects being tried, beginning of new legal activities happening, more people going off-grid starting in this autumn, more signs that the society is indeed dividing, and then more people are awakening. This is also a sign of spiritual revolution. A lot more people begin awakening, question authority, and seek more spiritual value to life. We still have more shocking news connected to geology, weather, and global upheavals to get to, so hang in there. Things must change to get better, and some of it is very challenging, but this is a time of spiritual ascension, for after the old falls, new and better will rise up. Just be prepared, be safe, have lots of supplies on hand, double down on your spiritual practices, vibrate in the heart, and have what you need in an emergency, and we're all going to get through this, and things have to fall in order for things to get better. And as the more we raise our consciousness, the more it affects others, and the smoother the transition is, and the less people that have to suffer through it. Also, 3i Atlas becomes a major player. I remote viewed it in August, and what I got, this was a few weeks ago, and some of it's starting to verify, but what I got is in a video above for you. Interestingly, in different in a different video, I picked up a different one that I think it's a different one than I'm flashing above. That I picked up that it was dense, which we don't know that yet, but that it had nickel in it, and that got verified maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. That and a lot of carbon-based gases. So the nickel, that was interesting. That was verified. Its unique path that appears choreographed against all odds brings up a lot of speculation. Is this higher intelligence? Is this extraterrestrial beings? And it will say, now, I do get it as some form of intelligence, even though technically it's likely an interstellar comet, perhaps a life form from near galactic center that we don't understand. But either way, it has a huge dust and plasma corona that upsets the electrical circuitry of the inner atmosphere. It changes patterns in the sun. It causes more plasma ejections and more stuff like that. And solar storms affect Earth and create Earth storms also. Things to keep in mind. Let me get back into my notes. So understand either way, it's a huge dust plasma corona. Path will affect the sun and her planets circuitry. The potential to fire off the biggest solar flares and coronal mass ejection since 2003 is on the table. It's not guaranteed that it'll happen, but this object is likely to precipitate such an event, maybe even a Carrington type event. And between that and other things, this could be a record season. The autumn of 2025, that is, for severe weather, geological events, as well as space weather, which affects geology, atmospheric conditions, and 3i Atlas can influence everything from space weather to geopolitics. So when I remote viewed, I felt some level of consciousness beyond what you would expect from a traveling interstellar object. And it may be some kind of a probe connected to higher intelligence, or maybe a life form we don't understand. And I also had a vision of the brightest auroras since 2003, right here in the Catskill Mountains. I favor that in October, but that could be September through November. So we're likely to get at least one major solar storm out of this. We'll see if that vision holds true. I also had vision of tsunami waves propagating from the Northeast Pacific off of the northwest coast, the southern Alaskan coast. And just recently, 2 days ago actually, some minor to moderate tremors have fired southwest of the Arcadia subduction zone off of southern Oregon and northern California. And though that in itself is likely from land settling from past geological events, keep an eye on it since I had the vision. So keep an eye in case these are foreshocks and a major event is still coming. September and October is possible for earthquake, tsunami activity around the Arcadia subduction zone and points around that area. Also, the Californian and San Andreas, especially September through November, could get very active. And California actually has gotten active in the last couple of days. Minor, but active. The New Madrid fault line, the one along the Mississippi, as well as the Carolinas, outside chance of the Northeast to get significant tremors, more likely October through January for those being on the table. I think I think one, if not two, new interstellar objects will be discovered soon. Huge space discoveries this autumn, very likely. There's something else I wanted to say about that. Just that I think I have other notes on geology further on, but I'll just say that now that not everything that I predict geologically is gonna verify, especially this soon. Some of it may happen later, some of it not at all, and there may be a few surprises. But this is what I'm picking up on, and generally these predictions have a way of panning out. And in fact, I got the Russian. First, I got the Japan to Russia, then Eastern Russia, the major earthquake, and then later on I got the exact date. So a lot of times these things pan out. Also, Peru and South America. Can see major tremors and political upheaval for these areas. Venezuela, Colombia could undergo massive geological change. In other words, watch South America also, anywhere along the Pacific Ring of Fire. Earthquake and volcanic activity near Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, near New Zealand. All these places we'll see, not all will see action, but several, but not all of them. We've talked about these areas in others. All part of the living earth balancing, recalibrating to these new energies and balancing and responding to the harmful human activities that we've been experiencing. Volcanism could reach records this month. Watch the Mediterranean in Italy, Camp Flegrei, might pronounce that right, for possible eruptions. I think that area is going to get more active, but not the doomsday super volcano that you may be hearing about on the internet and YouTube. Also, West Yellowstone's likely to get more active, but I don't think anything too out of the ordinary this autumn, but keep an eye on it anyway. The earthquakes, the splitting of the earth that I saw in the desert for I think either August or September forecast, I think what I was picking up on was the Iran earthquake, because that's the desert also, even though I interpreted it as Arizona and California. So if that's it, great, but still keep an eye on Arizona, Nevada, California, those areas. There's still some activity that's likely to happen there. And chances are earthquakes, volcanoes will spring up in areas that I'm not mentioning. Okay, watch Arctic regions, including Iceland, the Drake Passage, so Antarctica, and those areas. So the Earth getting very volatile. The interstellar comet adding juice to the system is likely to enhance and increase that in a time where geological activity is slated to be high anyway. It's part of the Earth changing. The Earth's a living being and she is changing, and this is part of the changes, increased activity and stuff like that. So have a plan, right? September, October. Also, I'm seeing major landslides developing. They're already happening. September, October, big month for winds. I'm seeing a lot of wind around that time. Hurricane season, as I predicted in June, would be less active than what the experts were saying, but that it would be backloaded. And like I predicted in June, 2 and 3 major hurricanes affecting the U.S. One Gulf near Mississippi, maybe Louisiana, possibly anyway. One in Florida and the East Coast. Watch for flooding. The Northeast is suspect. Florida or to the Carolinas, there could be a major impact. Late September into October, especially. So there could be a series of 3 major tropical events in the eastern U.S., and there could be one major desert flooding in the Pacific, in the desert from a tropical system in the Pacific Northwest. And another wild card is geoengineering, HARP generated, enhanced hurricanes that are hard to predict, and that could throw these predictions a little bit off or change them. So be aware of that as well. So also I'm seeing a record fire season, particularly and possibly by size, like a record size fire. And as I'm saying that, I'm looking for that. That could be more like towards places like Idaho, Montana, in that area. And that just came to me as I was talking. But I think a couple of impactful events around LA or Southern California are happening. Watch out for a coastal fire. Also near around Turkey or the Baltic countries, Canada, Australia, to name a few. Also, the likelihood for an early nor'easter, October to November, can create significant coastal flooding and damage. So that's another weather thing. And more weather anomalies, records, etc. Flooding, winds, fire. Flooding, winds, and fire remain the greatest threats, but it's all on the table. Also, more flooding, geological events in China and Japan, and a lot of political strife and resetting in Japan is also worth noting. And I'm also seeing the Chinese army becoming more active. And I can see another East Coast flooding event around New York City or one of the major cities around the East Coast. So keep an eye on that. The oceans are very highlighted also. There could be a major oil spill, so watch out for that. Fish washing up on shore, maybe another round of oarfish sighting, the deep sea fish that come up when there's a lot of volcanic or nuclear testing, deep in the oceans. Also on the table are huge medical and technological breakthrough. October, November, especially, big period of advancements, rollouts of new AI networks, new therapies, new AI networks being bought online. Okay, big power outages on the table regionally, but could be also widespread. The northeast of the U.S., around the Pacific Southwest, Europe, also islands. Well, Puerto Rico had one recently, right? So anywhere, but also I see a lot of new discoveries with the UFOs, with aliens, alien disclosures, interactions with extraterrestrial beings. I think that's going to be hot news this autumn, that it's going to reach another and a higher level where contact is made, there's more disclosure. There's been some conjecture, there's some that believe that the government, I think there is some interaction with high government officials and extraterrestrial intelligence. And there's some that believe that the recent Donald Trump disappearance was more of a conference with extraterrestrial beings. And I know that sounds woo-woo and crazy, but I've been a big believer of that all my life, basically, that we're not alone. How could we be alone? But that we have help and we have assistance from more advanced beings that are not interfering but helping to guide the trajectory, because humanity is in a big process of awakening. That's why so much crap is happening and why so much upheaval is happening on the earth, because the old ways don't want to let go and die. Those in power don't want to give up and lose their power, so they're trying to suppress spiritual awakening, but people are awakening anyway. So there's a big clashing. There's a lot of programming. Some of it's through technologies, a lot of it's through news, advertising, divide and conquer, and all of that stuff. So I felt, and virtually known, I can't prove it, but virtually known, that our governments have been interacting with higher intelligences. So there's those that believe that Donald Trump might have been meeting with the ETs, and it's interesting to as crazy as it sounds to a lot of you, I'm sure, not all of you, because you're used to me in this channel. There have been, from what I've heard, some more like announcements or more energy around Trump talking about possible UFOs and extraterrestrials or other world leaders. So I think that that's going to be something that's big in the news also. And then to sum it up, this is a time of huge global awakening. So I think we've said that a few times. And this is a good time for us individually to raise our energy and to connect in community and help to raise the collective. Together as community, we'll get through the rough parts, and we'll see our passage to New Earth, where things will, in time, become more fair, more just, and people will be happier, will be growing and living their life, integrating the technology and the AI, rather than that being a tool for further control over the masses, rather being part of the awakening and the ascension. So anyway, I hope that's good for you. Over here, I'm going to flash the September psychic forecast, where I have different predictions and some of the same, and go into more detail. And once we get near to October, I'll change that to the October. So whatever month it is, we'll have that there. So thank you. I hope this is helpful. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Please comment, and comment this video. And if you like what we do here on the channel, please subscribe to the Medium channel, become part of our